cute kids will win the day. So
Right.
I am going to go ahead and make sure I start recording so I don't miss anything. So this show isn't about anything in particular other than what you would like to talk about. The show is about the guest and not any subject in particular. So it's just a great opportunity for me to make excuses to talk to folks like yourself, but also just the regular people on Twitter, quote the regular people. I mean, the idea is to help people, just relate to each other and understand how we're all just kind of humans with some of us have cooler jobs than the rest. So,
Well, I don't know about that, but okay. Excellent.
So all I'll do, do you prefer Joe or Joseph?
Yeah, Joe's perfect.
Okay. And I'm Dan, by the way. And that way I'll just open the show with my usual intro. This is all unscripted. I learned that Larry King never prepared for an interview, so I felt like I was in pretty good company.
All right, perfect. Now, is this video and audio as well?
I am recording the Skype or not the Skype, but the Zoom just as a backup. If you don't mind video, that's fine with me as well.
Yeah, no, I don't mind. I'm just going to grab a water then.
Sure, yeah, make sure.
Excellent.
I want to be well prepared. That reminds me, I'm gonna grab my coffee real quick.
All right.
Yeah, that's how we survive, I guess. One moment.
Sure.
Yeah, I recently started doing the video side because it makes a nice premium for the $10 Patreon patrons.
Right.
But okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do the intro and we'll get right to it. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Broadcasting worldwide from the Toadsuck Studio in beautiful Central Arkansas. You're listening to Bad Choices in Bourbon. I'm your host, Dan Decker at DanDeckr on Twitter. With me today is Joe Mallozzi. And it is an absolute pleasure to have you here. For the listeners, to me relates mostly for Stargate, but also most recently the show Dark Matter. And so, Joe, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it's like I said, it's a huge opportunity for me to get to speak to you. Other than Star Trek, there's Stargate and Battlestar and Star Wars. And Stargate is they all live at this top level. So I've seen your name a lot at the end of the show, and because of that, it's it's a big thing for me to be able to get to see you today. So thanks for coming to the show.
No, very excited.
Yeah,
to be here. Yeah,
fantastic. So like I mentioned pre-roll, it's just about trying to get to know you. So you can start like with where you come from, where you've been, how you got to be a writer and a show producer and runner and things like that.
Well, sure. I mean, as a kid growing up, I loved sci-fi. I loved to read, mostly comic books. And then my mother, I think, grew concerned about my love for comic books. So she started to gift me novels. And so I ended up reading Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke and Harlan Ellison, and always wanted to be a writer. And I would write a lot of short stories, and I would tell my mother I wanted to be a writer. But of course, my mother would tell me, well, writing isn't really a career. Writing is something you do on the side where, maybe you want to be a journalist and you can write on the side. Ultimately, because I read so much, I read so many books, I decided maybe I would write my first novel. And I wrote a first novel, and it was terrible. But a friend of mine who read the novel said, this would make a great film script. And so I adapted that terrible novel into an equally terrible script, but learned how to script write. And from there, I actually thought, well, maybe there's an opportunity for me to be a screenwriter. And when you're a young screenwriter trying to break into the business, the brass ring is film. And you think, wow, being a film writer would be the best thing in the world. But in truth, film is a director's game. So The chances of you getting a script, a film script sold are very small. The chances of it getting produced are even smaller. The chance that your name will be the only one on the credit will be even smaller because they'll probably hire another writer to rewrite you. And then once the film is in production, your chance of actually getting involved, getting invited to the studio for the shoot is even smaller. So that's film. Television, on the other hand, is where the power rests if you're a writer, because you can work your way up, as I did, from a staff writer to showrunner. So, I mean, the way I broke into the business is I actually started writing for animation. And, you know, I find, you know, whenever young aspiring screenwriters ask me how to break into the business, I always suggest an atypical path, which is to approach animation studios, because they tend to be a lot more receptive to new writers. You get to hone your craft and you get to be paid while doing it. So that's the way I got in. And I went from writing an animation to story editing animation to developing animation to teen live action sitcoms. I did a series called Student Bodies for like 65 episodes. Then from there on to 1 hour action adventure, and ultimately ended up on Stargate for SG1's 4th season. It was supposed to be a 2-year gig, but the show, the series kept on getting picked up, and then we did a spin-off, and then we did another spin-off. And so all told, I was there for 12 years, 17 seasons of Stargate franchise.
Yeah.
From there, ultimately ended up on doing my own show, Dark Matter, all 3 seasons available on Netflix.
Yeah.
I was a showrunner on a very quirky YA sci-fi hip hop series called Utopia Falls for Hulu that dropped last year. And right now I'm just developing a bunch of shows. I've got actually 5 or 6 projects in the works. And in this business, you have to have multiple balls in the air because you never know what's going to land. And it's always either the one you least expect or the one you like least. So from my experience.
Which sometimes those are not mutually exclusive, I'm sure.
No.
But speaking of comic books, for the folks who aren't seeing the video, behind you is a wonderful smattering of representation. We've got the Dark Knight, we've got Judge Dredd, and we've got Iron Man,
Yes.
all of whom I can appreciate. Now, with Dredd, I never got into the comics, but even as campy terrible as the 90s movie is, it's still fun to watch, and I thought the Carl Urban update was pretty fantastic.
I agree on the Carl Urban update. I think that is an underappreciated gem.
Yeah, well, and Lena Headey is in it too, and oh my gosh, yeah, she's great in anything. Throwback to Sarah Connor Chronicles, that's where I first remember seeing her. Of course, the Queen in the 300 and Game of Thrones is maybe something she did. So, well, you know, again, I thank you for all the work you did on Stargate. That show is, I'm rewatching it. My middle child is watching it for the first time, so we got 2 watches going on in between the new stuff that Disney drops. We've got the oldest and I are watching Battlestar Galactica, and then the middle child and I are watching Stargate SG1. And the youngest is catching me up on the Flash. So I've got quite a lot going on.
It's a lot of watching.
It is.
On your plate.
Fun, though. Yeah. Well, you know, quarantine and pandemic kind of opened the opportunities. So it's been fun, though. It's been a lot of fun. So 4th season of Stargate, it was still on Showtime at that point, right? It hadn't moved to Sci-Fi yet.
Yep. We ended up doing, well, that's why, because we assumed it would be 5 and out. And then we got the 6th season pickup on Sci-Fi Channel, and we thought we would do 1 more season, and then we ended up getting every season would end.
It was
we would always go in. Yeah, we always assumed it would be the last season, and so we wrote as if we were ending the series, and then episodes before the end, we hear about a pickup, and so it happened every year until season 10, and that was, you know, ironically, the year that I thought we would get picked up, and that was the year that we got canceled. So
I remember all of that with you know, all of the emotion that I had surrounding every potential not new season of Stargate that came around, and that was kind of endemic of Sci-Fi Channel at the time. May still be. They tended to always keep the fans like on the edge of their seats. Stargate went through that. Battlestar Galactica went through that, where we were all like, "Are we even going to get to see the finish line?" So yeah, I'm glad they, and unfortunately, with Universe, I really enjoyed that show. I thought it was a brave, bold new take on something that we held near and dear, and deserved more opportunity. And I know they're still flying out there. They're gonna get.
Yeah, they're still in stasis.
Yeah,
between galaxies.
It's fine. It's fine. Yeah, it's fine. They'll be fine. So breaking into writing, now you started with a novel that became a screenplay. Is that screenplay ever seen production?
No, absolutely not. That is, it was a learning experience, really.
That's fair.
Ended up writing another one with my former writing partner, and that was actually much better. And that's what got us, some of our early live action gigs. But that also sits unproduced as well. I've never actually written or produced a feature. It's been all television.
Okay.
So over, almost like 400 hours of television between.
That's pretty significant.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of which I've seen a lot of them.
Great.
Yeah. Now I am remiss on Dark Matter. I must admit, I need to catch up on that, because I'm
you
sure.
Do. If you like the tone, the humor of SG-1 and Atlantis, I think you'll appreciate Dark Matter, but it's a little more serialized with a lot of twists and turns and shocks and surprises. And that's all I'm going to say. We'll circle back next podcast, and and I'm gonna pick your brain.
There we go. That's totally fair. That's totally fair. Yeah, I with regards to Atlantis, I was everybody Johnny come lately on Jason Momoa. I was like, y'all, the kid's been around a while, and he's been good at it since he showed up. So welcome to the party. And it's nice to see him have gained so much success, because he seems like a really nice guy. And I appreciate his work. So it's good to see him. And he did a really good job as Aquaman. Give him credit on that, So what did you mentioned a few things. What was like your most notable sci-fi growing up? Did you gravitate to any one franchise? There were a lot less franchises when we were younger, but
in terms of sci-fi, I always really loved short stories. So Warren Ellison's Dangerous Visions 1 and 2, short story collections. I love those. I also read a fair amount of fantasy, and in terms of like series, there was no particular series in sci-fi that I passionately followed, but Michael Moorcock's Elric series and Fritz Lieber's Fafhrd and the Great Mauser series in fantasy were two other series that we actively followed.
Okay, so like I appreciated short stories. And as you mentioned that, I seem to recall enjoying short stories, more digestible. You get on average you get more shorts, you get more story, right? It's like watching a half hour versus an hour. These we have shows like WandaVision and Lower Decks that came along, and they're these 22 23 30-minute shows where it feels like pulp. You're just consuming the pulp. And when getting into a novel the length of The Stand or something like that is a long-term commitment for some of us when it comes to reading. And I recall fondly being just tearing through like the Bachman books, Stephen King's The Bachman books, where like The Jaunt and some of those other stories that came out of that, and just crushing them. And whereas the novel was just like, oh, this is a lot. And I imagine like from the writing perspective too, you kind of get that feel, right?
I have nothing but respect for authors of prose fiction, novelists in particular. I mean, it's really, really tough. And I totally agree. I used to read a lot when I was younger, and then as I began to write more and more, my novel reading kind of fell off until about 10 years ago. And then I picked it up again, and I've been a voracious reader up till last year. During the pandemic, you would think, since I had more time, I would be, more likely to do more reading. But in fact, actually, the last year was my worst reading year in quite some time.
And that's kind of how I need to be a better reader. Like you said,
Mhm.
I read a lot as a youngster and a young teenager. Um, Most notably, all of the Robotech books.
Oh yeah.
That was a
Are you
lot
an
of
anime fan?
um, not in a real big sense. My kids have picked up on some really strong stuff. They like Attack on Titan, My Hero
Great.
Academia. We got two big
Yeah.
hero fans in the house. For me, it's more that early American import stuff. Voltron,
Right.
a lot of love for that. And Robotech is mentioned, Speed Racer,
Hmm.
those properties were what I and G-Force, the Battle for the Planets.
Make you
uh,
nostalgic for your youth.
yeah, absolutely. And it gave me I really appreciated the style. I just never it was such a broad world post that early
Hmm.
introduction that I didn't really felt like I had the time to invest in being a good anime fan.
Hmm.
But I do have the properties that I appreciate still and enjoy. And it's influenced a lot of pop culture. And that I keep up with pretty regularly, just with the folks that I work with. It keeps me pretty well
Hmm.
informed as to what the kids are hip to these days.
Hmm.
Well, where'd you grow up, if you don't mind?
I grew up in Montreal,
Okay.
Canada. So yeah, very cold winters, surprisingly hot summers. Yeah.
That's what I've heard is that, Canada has more than one season, contrary to popular
Hmm.
belief.
Hmm.
And I got to say, I think, well, you're definitely the second Canadian on the show. But I
Yeah.
don't know if the first one counts. He's technically a British expat. So, but still, he
You need
stayed
more
within
Canadians
the.
on the show.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'm
Yeah.
working on that. I was on a Canadians show though, so that counts for something.
How was that?
No,
Did everybody treat you nicely?
Oh yeah, no, Rachel was great. We got into some pretty tough stuff. It was nice.
Hmm.
We keep the kid gloves off around here and try to have real talk. Just to make sure everybody understands that everybody's going through something, right?
Hmm.
But yeah, like you said, keeping up with your books in the pandemic, it was ridiculous how long my podcast stack got from shows I didn't listen to while I had plenty of time to listen to them. It seemed like, you know, that was my ride to work routine, was to listen to my shows and have
Hmm.
those unilateral conversations. And then when that drive to work was basically, I didn't have to drive to work most of last year.
Hmm.
The store I work at was closed for the most part. So, uh, that took away that drive time and got behind. But I've got a few books laying around that I do want to read through, and some sci-fi stuff from a independent author that name's Dan Morin. And he's written
Hmm.
a series of books called The Galactic Cold War. And from what I've read so far, it's really good stuff, but I need to commit and
Great.
get into it and
Mm.
make it work. So you spent your whole youth in Montreal? Are you still there?
No, actually, my family's there, but I actually moved uh, way back in 1999, moved to Vancouver, the other side of the country, to work on
Yeah.
Stargate,
Oh yeah.
and ended up staying there. And then I set up my own show, Dark Matter, that we ended up shooting back I call it the East Coast, but it's not really the East Coast, but it's very close to Montreal.
Hmm.
Um, and I would just travel back and forth between production on Dark Matter in Vancouver. I had a house in Vancouver, and then finally, after we wrapped season 3, I decided, why don't we just sell the house? We'll move to Toronto, and we'll do the last 2 seasons of Dark Matter. And sure enough, as so often happens in this business, the day we got to Toronto was the day that I got the call that Dark Matter had been canceled. So as it turns out, it wasn't a bad decision because the housing market kind of dropped off in Vancouver, and meanwhile, Toronto is the film and television capital of Canada, so it's a good place to be.
Yeah, I was gonna say there are a couple shows that get filmed in Toronto. I know that Star Trek Discovery has been filmed
Yep.
there, I think the last 2 seasons. And part of that, one, I think Canada makes it easy. Also tends to be a little bit safer in the current situation than other places where films are being made, so that it can also be taken into account. But yeah, it's interesting to me that those two sides of the country have become places to. Well, Vancouver has the landscapes,
Yeah.
and Toronto has the cityscapes. So you get the best of both worlds. And when a place makes it nice and friendly and easy to film, then you know where you're going to go, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think also Vancouver's kind of attractive because it's in the same time zone as LA.
Right. Right.
So,
Jet
they
lag
refer
is
to it
less
as
of an
home. Yeah.
issue. Yeah. And everybody's kind of used to the schedule.
Yeah.
That's one thing I've learned about connecting with so many people around the world is time zones can be a big trick when it
Yes.
comes to getting two people coordinated. And I mean, other scheduling aside, just having things to do in life, when you're thinking 6, 7, or, hours difference in the time. And it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon for me, and the folks I'm talking to may be getting ready to go to bed. So
Hmm.
it can be a little bit interesting for sure. And so what was the first TV production you had people see? What was the first show you got out there?
Well, it was an animated short called Patrick Pig Learns to Talk for the Busy World of Richard Scarry.
I
Um,
remember that
and it
name.
was that it was like a 5-minute animated short, but that short kind of encapsulates the type of writing I do to this day, basically with a sense of humor, and there's always some sort of twist. So I'm not going to ruin it for you. If you go and check out Patrick Pig Learns to Talk, you'll learn the twist. But that was the first thing I ever produced. Then when it came to live action, it was like a teen sitcom, Student Body. But the big one for me was obviously Stargate. It was an episode called Scorched Earth that turned out to be a fairly controversial episode for the fans. But it was
Remind me.
the SG team ends up traveling to a planet and essentially helping to transport the these people who their home world is being destroyed or is going through some sort of catastrophic annihilation event, and so they transport all these refugees to a world, and then they encounter a ship that is terraforming this chosen world into a sort of a planet with an atmosphere more conducive to an alien life form, but deadly to humans. And so what ensues is sort of not so much a battle per se, but certainly a significant disagreement between Jack O'Neill and Daniel Jackson. And Jack, of course, is like, well, we're humans, so we have to side with the humans. Whereas Daniel very much is of the pacifist camp, and is like, hey, I want to go up to the ship. I want to talk to the caretaker of the ship, and and get him to willingly shut down the terraforming process. And there's one instant where the terraforming ship is approaching, and Jack has set up explosives, and Daniel is on the ship, and he ultimately sets off the explosion, but they don't go off because the aliens have done something to the explosions. And the fans were really not happy with Jack's decision to essentially blow the ship with Daniel on board.
Yeah, that's
Which is fair. Which is
it is
fair.
fair. It is fair, but also, that, I think it's important to ask those questions through the allegories that we have today. Those are two very valid points that, there may be a correct answer, but you have to walk that out. And Jack, as a military man, at the end of the day, he will make hard decisions
Yeah.
that get people he loves killed because he's had to do it before. And he's committed to, in those, and especially in the earlier series, he's a company man.
Yeah.
He loosens up later on, and maybe that was a little bit of your influence as a jokester. I know Richard Dean Anderson had a lot of influence on
Yeah.
Jack O'Neill's character. um, you know and one thing that I noticed that I thought was brilliant is how much of that dynamic that played through 10 seasons and even crossed over 2 shows, 3 shows for some of them. But how the dynamics that were set in the first episode played out through the entire show, especially and it's all in their faces. It's all in their faces when Sam and Jack establish that immediate respect for each other and the roles they know they're going to play in this. And Sam has always known Jack is smarter than he pretends to be.
Mm-hmm.
And Jack has Jack was immediately taken by and brought into respect Sam when she made her point. And so and to see that, just that relationship grow, Daniel's character for the most part, he grew and in a good direction. Big fan of Daniel. Has nothing to do with my name. But I always felt the most like he was my proxy the most, in that he's experiencing all this in an awe and wonder sense, where Sam is experiencing in a scientific sense, and Jack is there to acquire military hardware.
Basically,
and so,
yes.
yeah. And and then Tilk, I overuse the word indeed because of him to this day. Just and he is, and we see these I don't want to call them tropes, but we see these characters, these caricatures in stories regardless. And Tilk being the what is it to be or be a human or become human, or contrast humanity and call us out on our faults. And so you have, those are parallels that tend to be brought up in any storytelling, really. But definitely sci-fi, it seems, tends to lean on those pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You mentioned that the fact that they are presented as, I don't want to say caricatures, but certainly familiar archetypes.
There you go, archetypes.
When they're first introduced, and then as the series progresses, you get to kind of know them as really interesting, multi-layered human characters, even though Teal'c isn't human.
Right.
Well, I guess he is human.
Right. He's modified.
But yeah, he is not of this world.
Right.
But yeah.
I and I think you kind of lit on the point there, is that these archetypes help us relate to the characters immediately. It's something we're familiar with. It brings our guards down, and gets us without having to establish a whole lot of backstory. We can understand what kind of people we're starting with. And like you said, then we learn and grow with them, and we hope and dream with them, and we're angry when they make bad choices, and we're sad when good choices don't work out. And it is it just, I think that's why that show in particular spoke to me, as much as maybe Star Trek has, about how to see the world in a different way. And then I can't remember what season it was, but then we get Claudia Black and
Ben Browder.
Ben Browder, yeah. I wanted to call him John Crichton, but that's not his real name. And we get so many great people coming in later in the season. Julian Sands and Marina Baccarin.
Yep.
Yeah, just great stuff. And of course, all of those, you got a lot of crossover from Farscape and Firefly and Star Trek. And so being able to bring in all those familiar faces kind of helps build that, that fan base crossover, which is not a bad thing.
No, actually, I was a big fan of Farscape.
What a great show.
It's a wild series. So, I had Ben and Claudia on my radar for a while.
Nice.
The same thing with Robert Picardo,
Yes.
Voyager, who I've always been a big fan and was looking for the opportunity to get him on the show, and then ended up on introduced as a somewhat unlikable
Foil,
individual, and then by the end of his run on the franchise, you end up loving him because you kind of redeem him over the course of his stay on Atlantis.
Yep, Mr. Woolsey becomes someone you can endear to, and two, it is, we got Connor Trinneer. It is interesting to see characters or actors play characters that you maybe grind against a little bit from a place of like Trip Tucker is one of my favorite people. But Michael that's an interesting character, and it too, it exposes their range as actors, which is never a bad thing. But like Mr. Picardo, man, so much love from the Doctor on Voyager, and then to kind of be like, well, you're not friends with my friends here, bro. I'm not sure how I feel about you.
What's interesting is that the character doesn't really change. You just get to know him. He's still kind of the pencil pushing,
stiff-necked bureaucrat, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Collar's a little too tight.
But you get to know him a bit, and one of the things that when we talk about archetypes being a great shortcut, allowing audiences to connect with characters, but I think humor goes a long way as well, because you look at the Rodney McKay character, who was just a pain in the ass when the first time we met him on SG1, and then over time getting, he's still the same character, but there's a humor about him, and you kind of understand him, and the more you understand him, the more you kind of like him and appreciate him.
And when his sister comes along and she humanizes him by dehumanizing him, she's the only one who can really put him in his place. And knowing then too that the actors are actual siblings is just juicy juice. But yeah, McKay, wow, I'm not afraid to say that his introduction is incredibly uncomfortable to watch these days. There's a lot of stuff going on there. But like you said, he becomes endearing because you come to want what McKay brings, when he puts up that wall, his irascibility is his defense mechanism, and there's really a likable person underneath there, and sometimes he forgets and lets us see that, and that's very cool. But I just remembered, as I make my angry face, the last time I was on an Atlantis rewatch and we got to the episode where Carson, spoiler alert, or a 15-year-old show, where Carson Beckett dies. I stopped. I haven't picked it back up because by the time I realized what I was watching, it was too late, and the emotional impact had already happened, and I was like, I haven't gone. It's been a couple of years now. That hit me really hard, just so you know.
I mean, but did you finish Atlantis?
No, that was on a rewatch that I gave it up. No, I went through the whole show. That was.
So you do know spoiler alert. Also, right. He does come back.
He does come back, right? And but in a way that doesn't cheapen the loss as well. It was very well done, and always happy to see Paul McGillion on anything. He's such a treat.
A great actor, just and a really good guy.
That's kind of the read I got, was that he seems to be pretty nice fella. Absolutely. And so you've just gotten to have a lot of fun to work with such great people, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, I've been very lucky, and I think it starts from the top down. Brad Wright and Robert Cooper were the executive producers and showrunners of SG1, and they had an LTS policy: life's too short. So they would, if you were a jerk, they would not hire you. And so, yeah, exactly. And it's something I grew to kind of really appreciate, the fact that they would always foster and support from within. So a lot of the directors on the show, like Andy Makita, who's a very accomplished director now, and like directed a ton of episodes, started off as kind of the unit manager. Amanda was an actress, and now she's like a very well-established director. And it's because of Brad and Robert. They would always promote from within. And so, I got the chance to produce, to basically attend the concept and production meetings. I got to sort of go into editing, and I learned the ropes thanks to them. And it was overall a really positive environment. And I've been, unfortunately, on the other end, where I've been on productions that have not been particularly positive. And so, when I created my own show, I decided I would take a page out of the Stargate book and, basically, adopted the LTS policy on dark matter. And it was always great because, whenever guest stars would come on the show, they would, talk about the fact that it was such a positive experience. And I always took that to heart. I was, that's one of the biggest takeaways from my time on any production is if outsiders came in and commented on how positive, the vibe was, the experience was, then, I'm always.
That's that positivity touches on something that we make a big part of where I work. So I work for Apple in an Apple retail store, and but this pervades Apple's culture regardless, and it's called positive intent. And the idea being that if I come to you with an idea or a need to offer some feedback or vice versa, that you assume I'm coming to you with positive intent, and I'm giving that information to you expecting that positive intent from you, and vice versa when it's the other way around. And I've said it before here, but if you start to put that at the front of your everyday and try to find the positive intent, sometimes it's not there, but take a moment and find it. It changes the way things go for you, because you're not always being attacked, right? Sometimes it's just we're trying to have a conversation, but it sounds like fostering a positive environment, even in what you do, gets people's attention, because I've heard stories. We've all heard stories about what it's like to work in some production environments, and it's not great for people. And there's always that cautionary tale of don't meet your heroes because they might not be what you expect. And so it's really great to hear that not only were you brought into a fostering environment, that you just carried that torch forward, because like I said, we're all just people, and some of us have cooler jobs than the rest, or it's just a different job. And actors, we see them in this grandeur, but again, they're just people doing the job that they've been lucky enough to get. And there's a different world out there where maybe I'm an actor and I'm doing the best that I can. And when it comes to speaking about keep it about the work and not about the people. I didn't appreciate this story because not XYZ did a terrible job. There's a line there that we shouldn't cross. And it's nice to hear that, you bring that to what you try to do.
Yeah. I mean, we do the best we can. And I'm not saying it's not a challenging, production is very tough, grueling, long hours sometimes, but as long as you're doing it with people you respect and you enjoy spending time with, then it just makes it a lot easier.
Nice. So I was thinking too, you mentioned, those, the long time names on the show like Stargate. And did you ever get to work with the DeLuise family?
Yeah, absolutely. Peter was a longtime director on the show. I mean, he ended up coming up to Toronto and directing an episode of Dark Matter for us.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still keep in touch with Peter, and I mean, Michael was in Wormhole Extreme. His brother, his other brother David, actually played Sam's love interest in a few episodes. Sadly, never got the opportunity to work with Dom. Although when Peter got married, Dom gave a speech at the wedding that just had everybody on the floor.
Oh,
he was
nice.
a very funny man.
Yeah, no, I've had, I enjoyed watching, I can't remember who it was, but one of them was on Sequest, back in the day.
Yeah, Peter.
Yeah, okay. And so yeah, I loved that show and his character. And then of course just seeing that name repeatedly come up on the credits in Stargate, and then when their dad got the chance to be on the show, just fantastic stuff.
Yeah.
And it's always felt like, you know, because of that, there's going to be a family style environment when you know, family works on a show like that together. So it sounds like that kind of influenced the production values overall.
Yeah, I'm sure. And you know, what you mentioned about family environment, I think, you know, the best sci-fi has that at its heart, whether it's, you know, the crew of the Enterprise or Team SG-1 or, you know, or the Guardians of the Galaxy. Even though they're not, you know, technically a family, they are a family unit of sorts. Exactly. Who, you know, may fall out at times, but yet at the end of the day, they always have each other's backs. And it's something, you know, I see less and less of in sci-fi, which is kind of unfortunate. And you know, hopefully we'll see more of it in the not too distant future.
Speaking of seeing more of it, and I know, like, you know, I know you can't say if something's happening, but in the general sense, there's a lot of pent up energy for some new Stargate. You know, it was disappointing to see the recent anniversary go by without something to stand out for that. And you know, I want to see something new and continue maybe an adventure or find some new adventures. But MGM, if you're still in charge,
they are still in charge.
We have money to give you. We would like to give you money.
They are well aware that the fandom is out there and hungry for more. Brad Wright is actually working on developing a new series, and you know, he's going to go out with, hopefully, and make a sale, and we'll see a new Stargate in the not too distant future. I mean, everything is so up in the air now because of the you know, pandemic, but fingers crossed.
Well, you know, I am always available for consultation, story ideas.
Excellent.
You know, if something comes up, just get in touch with me. If you need incredible voiceover work, you know, whatever.
Excellent. Good to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So out of all the things you've worked on, do you have a favorite child?
Yeah.
Are
absolutely.
you allowed? Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it? Dark matter?
It is dark matter.
Yeah.
It's you know, I mean, it's you know, I mean, it's just because it's mine, and I've been sitting on the idea for so long, and I had like a master plan, so that I worked on for many years. So it's not like one of those shows where, you know, you tune in and you're like, they just contradicted what happened 2 episodes earlier. They don't know you know, where they're going with it. You know, I was able to, you know, seed clues in like episode 3 that don't pay off till season 3, things like that. And
you're speaking my language, bro.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to watch the show.
Yeah, I'm doing a rewatch with a group called sort of Orville Nation. It's a kind of a YouTube a live broadcast we do every Monday.
Follow me on Twitter.
They're great people, and so they asked if I would join, and I said sure. And so every Monday we go over a different episode, and so now we worked our way up to season 2, episode 6 is on next, and I try to get like an actor or director or someone from the crew to join us. And it's always interesting because, you know, one person is just watching it for the first time, but the other people have all seen it. And what I love is the fact that they will be like, oh my gosh, just watching this episode now, I realize what you're setting up later on down the line. And you know, I love it.
I can tell just looking, seeing your face that, you know, you're a proud papa of this. And
I am.
I want to just say congratulations on realizing that. I don't know, did you get to see it through to your realized completion? So there's still more story to go.
Yep, I had envisioned it as 5 seasons. I envisioned each season as a book in a series, so with a beginning, middle, and end, but with serialized elements that carry throughout. And actually, we were the second highest rated scripted series on Sci-Fi, and we were canceled. So still smarts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to, as an unaffiliated party, say that tends to be the reason why I quit watching shows on that network, because I would get emotionally invested, and there would be no reason or rhyme to why the carpet got pulled out from under us.
Yeah,
I'm thinking about Caprica.
Yeah. I mean, personally for me, I'm on Twitter, and you can mute words on Twitter.
Yeah. And
that broadcaster's word is mute. I don't want to hear anything. I haven't heard anything more about it in like, I think 3 years.
But I do want to say too that there has to be, I would expect there to be some sort of just there's just this level of I don't know, disbelief in the fact that something, like you said, you've fostered this idea for so long, and you have this, you have the conspiracy board mapped, right? And and then to see it get started at least is got to be incredibly rewarding.
Yes, no, absolutely. And we had like a great cast, and I was able to bring in some Stargate veterans as well. Mike Dopid, who played Varro. Like, I think he played 4 different characters on the Stargate franchise. Tori Higginson, who plays Elizabeth Weir on Atlantis,
big fan.
plays a great, one of my favorite guest stars. David Hewlett guested as well. So I mean, yeah, it's one of the nice things about sort of working in the industry is getting the opportunity to work with people, get to know them, and then hopefully bring them back and to work on something else.
And get to see that expanded range they've got. There's one other topic that I want to touch on with you before we get too close to quitting time here. But interesting or unusual food cuisine. You have a kind of a curiosity with that. Is that right?
I mean, on Twitter, I try to sort of keep it consistent, and there are certain subjects I cover. So I'll always do something dark matter related. I'll always do something Stargate related. Lately, it's been concept art.
I love that, by the way.
Yeah, I will always do something comic book related, and lately it's been just sourcing these crazy Superman covers from like the 50s and 60s and 70s, where Superman comes across as such an incredible jerk. I have a 16-year-old rescue pug, so occasionally I will profile her. And then, of course, usually every morning, I will do a food-related post. And usually I will source weird food, either recipes or just food items, and ask yes, no, to get a sense of, where people's opinions are. And, some pretty crazy stuff like, I maybe can be surprised by the stuff that I would or I wouldn't eat. Like there was, I think it was like a cricket souffle or something once, and I would try that. Whereas there was another one where it was like a sandwich, but instead of the bread, it was pickle. That I would not try. I would have no interest in trying that.
No fan of pickles?
So I'm not a huge fan of tart and sour.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if I'd want a whole slice of sandwich bread sized pickle twice. That's a lot of pickle.
Yeah. So it's varied, certainly varied, interesting food items.
Absolutely. So that is something that I, whenever I'm offered an opportunity to try cultural food, I tend to, I try to let my guard down and go for it.
Yeah.
Because, what we as mass consumers eat as quote Mexican food, at least here in the States, is not what they eat in Mexico. It's not the food that the people eat there. It's not what they make when they have dinner at home. And so, I've had friends where they're like, oh, I've made, this dish, but it is incredibly spicy because this is how we make it at home, or whatever the case may be. I don't shy away from that because, if I invited them over to my house and I cooked them something traditional, that wouldn't be weird. That wouldn't be unexpected. And it's an opportunity to see, I mean, literally the flavor profile of how someone else lives.
Yeah.
And why wouldn't you invite that in? But some strange foods, no, not on the menu. Because I've seen a couple of those where I'd be like, I don't think so, Joe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, weigh in. Yes, no, yes,
Yes,
no.
no, yes, no. Oh, I've got an opinion on a lot of things. Um, but is there something you're currently working on that you can talk about that we can expect, or is there something
Um,
you're passionate about that you want
well,
to?
I don't know what to expect. I mean, like I said, I have like 4 or 5 projects.
Right.
Two of them are actually time travel. One of them, Timescape, is very much in the vein of like the funniest, Stargate episodes, the funniest dark matter episodes, except it's just like an entire series with a time travel angle.
Okay.
Another one it's like a crazy hybrid gaming sci-fi K-pop series. I'm also a big fan of K-pop. So
Are you really? Oh, one
yeah,
of my
yeah,
good friends, Rashid, is a
yeah,
huge K-pop fan. So,
yeah. Well, that's another thing. Every day on Twitter, a hashtag mood, I will sort of put up another sort of a feature a K-pop song. And then the other one it was just recently announced. I'm developing an adaptation of a book series by Bruce McClellan called the Powder Mage Trilogy. And it's an interesting magic-based Napoleon alt history, Napoleonic era, like a flintlock fantasy series where the
okay.
magic revolves around gunpowder, a lot of political machinations, a lot of just epic battles. Just a terrific series, and I'm looking forward to adapting that.
I like the sound of that because that's a couple of times yet you've mentioned fantasy aside from
Mhm.
sci-fi. I am a huge D&D, Dungeons and Dragons
Oh yeah.
aficionado. I play, if I'm not playing, I'm DMing or I'm talking about Star Trek, and those
Mhm.
are those, other than the family, those are the primary things that I dig. And one of the campaigns I'm in is an alt history Western setting. So it's practical things, guns and such, but also has the magical element and things like that. So that
Nice.
sounds, and I'm, like I said, I'm a fan of alt history type stuff. You got For All Mankind, you got The Man in the High Castle.
Yeah.
There was The Watchmen is, ostensibly an alt history show. And
Yeah.
I made the mistake of watching For All Mankind and Watchmen binging them relatively close together. And so I was real confused about which alt history timeline I was in
Yeah.
relative also to actual history. So it was
Yeah.
a little confusing for a couple of weeks, but I got through it. But yeah, that's something I would definitely be interested in. Now, do you play D&D? Are you a D&D fan?
I used to play D&D, but it's been quite a while since my Goblin Fighter has
Oh,
with the
nice.
18 charisma has seen a campaign. It's been a while.
Oh, that sounds like a character I would play, where you intentionally break your power stat in a way
Yeah,
that
yeah.
I have a dex-based paladin, and people are like, "How do you play a dex-based paladin?" And I say, "Finesse weapons still smite." And so a goblin fighter with an 18 charisma who could charm somebody on
Yeah.
almost any roll, that's
And
cool.
yeah, otherwise just a completely average character.
Oh yeah, right, exactly. That's why you play your power stat.
Yeah.
Well, I might try. Don't be surprised if I try to rope you into a one shot one of these days and get you
All
into
right.
5e.
All
I've got a
right.
group of Trek fans. The DNDS, what do we call it? DNDS 9. So we've got a cool name and everything already. You're definitely welcome to come chuck some dice with us one of these
Excellent.
days.
Please.
Absolutely. Well, Joe, like I said at the beginning, it's been an absolute pleasure. But here we are, coming in on an hour. Here at Bad Choices and Bourbon, though, we don't end episodes. We bring them to a close because then you can open it back up at a later date and come back in for a second round. So is there
Absolutely.
anything else you want to get out there before we close? Anything you like to highlight other than the projects you're working on?
No, not really. Although I was going to ask you, what is your favorite bourbon?
My favorite bourbon? That's a good question. So I have two that I go to,
Hmm.
and if I'm out and my preferred isn't available, I go with Maker's Mark.
A classic.
A classic.
Excellent.
But I happen to here in Arkansas, just up the street from the town I live in, is the Rocktown Distillery. So we have local bourbon, and it is
Wow.
fantastic.
Really?
And the master distiller for
Mhm.
Rocktown was apprenticed by the master distiller from Maker's Mark. So
Ah,
either way I go, I mean, and I've toured that place. And oh man, if you've never toured a whiskey distillery, it smells so good in
I
there.
bet.
But that is the preferred brand here on the show when I get a chance to stop in. Another interesting side effect of where I live is there are what are known as wet and dry counties. So dry counties don't sell alcohol inside the county limits unless under some special, if it's a club, you can. So all the restaurants in my hometown are classified as clubs, so they can sell alcohol. So there's always a loophole, but we have to go up the road to get the liquor. So
Wild.
yeah, it's wild. It's Bible Belt politics.
Mm-hmm.
is the easiest way to describe it. Well, all right, Joe, like I said, man, we're gonna stay in touch. It's been an absolute joy to sit and chat with you today.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And to you, dear listeners, I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope to earn your ears back again next week. The easiest way, if you're inclined to support the show, is to please share it to your friends and family on all your socials of choice. And if you're really interested in helping out, you can find me on Patreon at patreon.com/DANDECKR, where you can earn early access and premium access to these shows and all the shows in the future. Otherwise, I'd just like to thank you again, and closing it down from the Toad Suck Studio in Central Arkansas. This is Dan Decker, and good night. All right, Joe, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I hear a dog coming in and out in the background.
Oh yeah, there's animals here. The studio is just a name. It is literally the middle of the common area of the house.
Awesome.
And everybody puts up with me being in the middle of the house. But I don't know what you've got planned for the rest of the day, but whatever it is, I hope it goes well for you. And
thank you.
Yeah, I hope you stay safe out there. And I look forward to, I'm going to catch up on Dark Matter. And that way I have an excuse to talk to you again.
Great.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. Thanks so much,
sir.
Dan.
It's been a pleasure.
Have a good day.
All right. You too.